and gentlemen, people of Russia, today we stand on the precipice of a monumental revelation, a moment that redefines not only our understanding of history, but also the path forward for our great nation. In an extraordinary discovery hidden beneath centuries of lore and legend, we have opened what can only be described as the oldest vault known to mankind. What we found within its ancient confines challenges the very fabric of our beliefs and heralds a new dawn for our country. Within this vault, we discovered figures of biblical proportions, characters that many have read about, debated, and revered. These figures, preserved against the sands of time, reveal a truth that is as profound as it is transformative. They are all black. This revelation, this undeniable truth, stands before us not as a contradiction to our faith, but as a testament to the diversity and unity that faith embodies. As your president, I see this moment not as a challenge to our beliefs, but as an opportunity to embrace a wider, more inclusive understanding of our history and spirituality. Russia, in its rich tapestry of cultures, traditions, and people, is uniquely positioned to lead the world into this new era of understanding and acceptance. From this day forward, let us proclaim our nation under the guidance of Black Jesus, a figure who represents not just the cornerstone of Christian faith, but also a symbol of the universal values of love, compassion, and brotherhood. This Black Jesus, whose likeness and history have been unveiled from the oldest vault, is a message to us all that divinity knows no color, that spiritual truth transcends race, and that our common humanity binds us more tightly than our differences divide us. Let this discovery remind us that history is not just the story of those who wield power, but also of those whose contributions have been overlooked or forgotten. It challenges us to re-examine what we know, to question our assumptions, and to open our hearts to the broader possibilities of understanding and faith. As we embark on this journey of discovery and understanding, let us do so with open minds and compassionate hearts. Let us build a nation that truly reflects the teachings of Black Jesus, a nation that stands for justice, equality, and love for all, regardless of race or creed.
Russia has opened its cellars to reveal remarkable paintings of Jesus dating back to the 1400s. Have you ever seen or heard of biblical icons where Jesus or the Virgin Mary have dark skin, or even Abraham or King David? Then look beyond Europe. Russia has opened its vaults to reveal biblical icons featuring darker-skinned figures. In case this is making you wonder if Russia has its own twist on biblical figures, the answer is a no. This is not the case at all. This is, a matter of fact, as real as the untouched horizon of time. These icons aren't just artistic anomalies. These hold deep meanings of hidden shaded truths, sparking serious, curious questions about history and faith, representation, and the unexpected corners of religious art.
Rome is currently hosting an exhibition of 40 Russian icons that have left their country for the first time. They are pieces of art that were hidden after the October Revolution of 1917 in order to protect them from anti-religious destruction.
There's been so much debate going on around the world of late, bestirred by the unveiling of these black biblical icons. Some tend to think that the icons had blackened over time due to age, while others say that the blackness of the icons has nothing to do with age, but are a measure of accuracy meant to depict the actual color of the skins of the people.
Alright, so I just saw what Vladimir Putin just dropped. I'm pretty new to religion, so I've been looking at things. I always thought he was black. I really did. So I told my buddy who has been in religion his entire life, super Christian, and he was like, oh yeah, you know, he was always kind of more black than white. And I was like, maybe he just doesn't get it. Like, if Jesus is black and David and, you know, all the other people are black, and black people have been enslaved by the white people for the last 200 years, and we've been lying to them about Jesus is black, not white. We've completely lied about it and then enslaved them, black people are going to be pretty pissed. Rightfully so. I would be fucking mad too. So, what happens next? Obviously they're going to do some, verification process on these paintings, but I mean, who lied? Who whitened or lightened up the pictures of Jesus and spread them all over the world to spread white propaganda? Who did that? I mean, I don't know, because I'm new to religion. I mean, my guess is the Vatican. Is the Vatican do it? Like, you tell me, who spread this white propaganda? If it's not real, are black people going to be upset? I think so. Rightfully so. They should have their place back. And whoever enslaved the black people should be held accountable. Liar, liar, pants on fire. This year has been so crazy so far. And it's just getting started. April 8th is coming up. That's the next thing. What's going to happen then?
This is Luke 8:17. For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known and come abroad. Shalom, Kahala Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahshai, Ba'Shem Makar Kodash. Double honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, who are the house of David reborn again in this generation. And shalom to the 130 Yasharallah, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who before losing our true heritage, we were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. So in today's lesson, we're going to talk about the announcement that the Russian President Vladimir Putin had made regarding the opening and revealing of the Russian icons of the biblical figures that the Orthodox Church has inherited from the Holy Roman Empire. Okay, because that's where these images come from. They come from the Holy Roman Empire. And let's go to the Bible timeline, because these are the images real quick. Let's just go through some of them that the Russian icons depicted, right? Depicted the Messiah and the Most High, which the true name, the Most High's true name is Yahweh, which is Hebrew for He is, and the Messiah's name, it's not Jesus, it's Yahweh Shai. That's Hebrew for He is salvation. These are the images that Russia has had, or should I say inherited, from the previous empires that have come before it. The Holy Roman Empire, and before that, the later stage Roman Empire, which was controlled by Jake, right? Which, let's go ahead and go into the Bible timeline so we can break this down. So, in the time when, in 70 AD, when Jerusalem was destroyed and the temple was destroyed by Rome, remember, you had Vespasian and Titus come to and put an end to the Jewish state, or the Israelite state, okay? Because at this time, it was only the southern kingdom of Israel, that being the so-called Negroes that were in the land of Israel. The northern kingdom, the Latinos and Native Americans, we had already taken off to the Americas close to about 600 years prior to this, okay? Now, even more than 600 years. But ultimately in 70 AD, when the southern kingdom was taken out, was kicked out of Jerusalem, it tells you in this book, From Babylon to Timbuktu, that 1 million Israelites flee into Africa, right? And this is where you get the Israelites, the southern kingdom of Israel, basically camping out and living and migrating to West Africa, right? This is why amongst this whole coast here, you see a lot of towns with biblical references, right? You also got like Negro land and the Ashanti tribes down here, places, and they trace their lineage back to like the Levites and all these things. There's so many, historic coincidences and linkages between the so-called Negroes on the west coast of Africa to the Israelites, that even the should I say the fake people in the land of Israel today have to admit that these people, like, what do they call, there's like certain African tribes that they've admitted have ancestral DNA that goes back to the Israelites. Now that, I don't know how they would figure that out, because I don't think they have DNA unless they've dug up a lot of the graves there in the land of Israel that go back to those times, and they've linked them that way, which is possible. But again, this in Africa is where the southern kingdom, the true Jews, fled, right? And then not only did they flee there, but a large amount of Israelites were taken to Rome as slaves, okay? And you can read about that in the Chronicles of Flavius Josephus. Flavius Josephus was a priest of the temple, right? At the time when it was under attack, he was also, for the most part, like the governor or ruling like body in the land of Jerusalem when the destruction came. He eventually was taken in by a Roman family whose last name was Flavius, which is where Flavius Josephus gets that name. Well, he eventually goes on to write these books to introduce the Israelites to the rest of the known world, right? The Roman Empire. So when you read his books, they're basically made for an outsider Roman audience, and that's why he frames his discussions and his explanations of the Bible and of the recent history that took place, the destruction of the temples and who did what, to a Roman audience. So he tends to kind of sugarcoat Rome's involvement in the destruction of the temple, but it's, proven that the Romans did burn down the temple. Now, that I said all that to say this, that those Israelites that went to Rome as slaves, they eventually rose up in power, just like they did here in America, right? It took about 200 years for them to get into high positions of power in the government here in America, and it was roughly the same thing. Now, a lot of Israelites were already in Rome. When you read the book of Maccabees, it tells you how the Israelites sent envoys to Rome to plead for Roman help against the Greeks and the Edomite Persians, right? The Seleucids people. Well, eventually, a lot of Israelites went to Rome to live there. So again, these Israelites living amongst the Romans, a lot of them came in as slaves later down the road. But there was people like Emperor Nerva, right? He was an older Jake, and they put him in power because this was the time when all these emperors were killing each other off. So they decided to put somebody who was politically safe in the position of emperor. And the reason why Nerva was safe is because he was a trusted general, and he didn't have any family or didn't have any children, so hence he didn't have anybody to pass the emperorship down the road to. Well, eventually, about 100 years later, this kind of set in motion that Jake would eventually take over Rome, and it didn't tend to fully come to fruition until this man, Septimius Severus, who was a Roman emperor in 193 AD. He took over Rome, and then this started basically the expulsion of the Edomites. Okay, the pagan Romans who were like Julius Caesar and all those people like Scipio Africanus, those people. Okay, those were the Edomites that had taken over Rome from the Japhites who had lived in that land prior to that, right, when it was known as Kittim. Well, eventually, Rome continues to be a so-called Negro-controlled nation, right? This is simply Jake he was a Roman, and they took over, and they eventually brought in their own morals and beliefs. And Jake, being an Israelite, they believe only in one God. That's a natural inclination for us to have is a belief in one God, where these other nations, they tend to believe in a whole plethora of gods. Well, when Constantine the Great got into power, he basically changed the belief system of Rome from a pagan belief into a one God belief, and he also established the Vatican. Okay, and then after that, basically the Byzantine Empire was established, and where modern day Turkey is today. This here is where we see a lot of these Russian icons come from. Okay, a lot of these Russian icons, when Byzantine fell to the Ottoman Empire, a lot of these icons basically left the Byzantine Empire and went over to the Holy Roman Empire, which by the time that was, was Germany or Belgium and Prussia. They basically fled to the Orthodox churches, which still existed in those areas. And again, when you look at down the history, right after the church had been established, it created all that false doctrine. The Edomites had fled Rome and headed up and started to dwell in the Caucasus Mountains for 1,000 years. The invention of hell was created. Jake, that had fled into West Africa, had started to be oppressed by not only Ishmael, the Arabs, but also the true Africans. Right? Eventually, Muhammad writes the Quran and Islam is established. Jake, freeing himself from the Arab slave trade and rising in that society, they become Moor, right? Moor is simply just a Latin term for black people, right? Like Moreno, right? Being basically the black one, right? Well, the Moorish Empire was established after that, right? These were basically the freed slaves or the Israelites who joined on to Ishmael, right? During the sub-Saharan slave trade. Well, I said all that to say this. Let's keep going here. The Holy Roman Empire came in about 800 to 18, which lasted until about 1800 AD. Okay, this empire here was so large, it eventually would create Germany, and the Spanish Empire would come from it. Okay, but a lot of the paintings that Russia showed off came from this empire, right? This is where all the art went to because of the Orthodox churches, and also these were Jake, but again they had lightened up over hundreds of years, right? Taking over Rome, they eventually would wed into other nations, and just like today, right? Look at a lot of the Israelite kids coming out; they're a lot lighter skinned than older generations. Okay, but again, there's always going to be a lineage of darker skinned Israelites, but that's the thing. The truth is starting to come out. This is Proverbs 21:1. The king's heart is in the hand of Yahweh, as the rivers of water. He turneth it whithersoever he will. So the Lord put it into the mind of Putin to bring this out, to make a large national announcement, which eventually would go around the world. And why is this? Well, because just like the elites, the presidents, and I've gone into it where I've shown videos of like past presidents admitting that they know that the Latinos, the Native Americans, and even the Negroes are the Israelites. Well, Putin also would know this. Because why? Because he's part of the upper elite echelon. These are things that are just known. And again, there's plenty of videos showing that outside nations, outside of the United States, where the brainwashing isn't as hard, they understand too who the Negroes truly are. Okay? Well, because of all the things that have gone on, I'm sure Putin has had a great idea to bring out, or to basically reveal the truth of who the so-called American Negroes truly are. Okay? And hence this is going to cause a lot of deception, because as we've seen in that second video, you had what appears to be an Edomite, but remember, he didn't have blue eyes or blonde hair, so chances are he probably descends from a line of an Israelite. But that being said, that man even said that so-called black people are going to be pissed when they figure this out, when they figure out that the Messiah is a so-called black man, and that they've been lied to this whole time. And like he even said, even he's been lied to. He didn't know that, how religion was set up, and he didn't know who did that. Well, the people who actually did that were the Edomites. Okay, yes, the Vatican spearheaded it, but ultimately, how did that happen? Well, let's go back to the Bible timeline. You got this man here, Rodrigo Borgia, right, also known as Pope Alexander VI. He basically was a pope in 1492, and what happened is this guy, he was a straight up Edomite. He came out of Castile, Spain, where the Jews had known to have fled. Because again, remember, the Ashkenazi, the Khazarians, the Khazar, they basically converted to Judaism, or to a religion based off of the true heritage of the Israelites, and they refer to it as Judaism. They eventually, cross over. They eventually get conquered by the Russian, and then they basically flood into Europe to meet the other biblical Jews, right? Saying, hey, we're also Jews, take us in. And this is where you get a lot of Khazar Jews moving into Spain and all that stuff. Well, that's where you get Rodrigo Borgia from. Okay, he comes out of that line, and there's a show called Borgia on Netflix where they even allude to this, right? Like, they're talking about this character, and like this other guy who wants to be Pope, he's talking to this other priest, and he's talking about this man. He says, I heard Rodrigo comes from Castile. They say he's one of the Castilian Jews. And the other priest says, shh, don't say anything about that. That's forbidden, right? And that's because Amalek, which is the biblical name for the so-called Jew, which is the top tribe of the nation of Edom. So ultimately, Rodrigo was a Edomite, okay? And on top of that, he was a top of the line Edomite, right? The Amalekites. Well, he eventually not only wanted to redo the image of the Messiah, but he decided to use his son as the model for the new image of the Messiah, right? The king of Saudi Arabia, Khan Sheikh Mohammed, whatever, he has the actual first image, right? It's called Salvador Mundi. Well, that image was created by an artist called Leonardo da Vinci, who the Vatican hired, and hired a bunch of other artists. And this is why these artists are so popular in today's society, is because they did a great work. And what was that great work? Well, they brought forth the Renaissance, okay? And along with it, the Renaissance arts and all the information and all the ways that these Edomites wanted to structure their society. Because again, why? Well, through occult practices and through marrying into nobility, gaining banking and money, financial powers, they were able to take over society. And when they took over society, they set it up in the way they wanted it to. And we are currently living in that empire that was set up, okay? And that's why those artists are so popular. To answer that man's question, it was the Edomites, led by the Vatican Church, who was headed by top Edomite Rodrigo Borgia, to repaint the images of the judges, right? And where does that come from? Well, it's Job 9:24. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where? And who is he? Right? And that's talking about these Edomites. How they would eventually come onto the scene, and they would basically hide who the true rulers of the world were, who the true judges of the earth are. Okay, this is why the true image of the Messiah and the Lord are hidden. Okay, and ultimately it goes to the will of the Lord. See, this is the Lord's will, that he's hidden from the majority of the world. And why is that? Well, it tells you here. This is Isaiah 45:15. Verily thou art a God that hideth himself, O power of Israel, the Savior. So you see, the Lord, to put us through a test, and when I say us, I'm talking about the Negro, Latino, and Native Americans, the Israelites, to see how we would do, the Lord hid himself. Because why? Well, because it was time for our punishment. And just like you punish a child, you put him on timeout and you send him to his room. You don't go into that room and stare at him unless you're psychotic or whatever. But you leave the room. You basically go away, and you leave the child by themselves to think upon their punishment, right? To serve their time. Well, that's what the Lord did to us, the Israelites, the Negro, Latino, Native Americans. He put us on timeouts. And he put us to punishment. This is why the Negro, Latino, Native Americans, we all suffered the same fate. We all went to war with our enemies. We lost. We got taken into captivities. We lost our heritage, and we are now serving a life a veiled servitude known as tax slavery under our oppressors, the people who conquered us, okay? Now, it's a lot harder to see now because they put a bunch of, glamour and shiny shit over the life that we live now. But that Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, if you're lucky, right? The not getting any free health care, not getting any benefits, that's your slavery. That's right there is your toiling. That's your drawing of water here in your land of your captivity. And well, why don't we know this? Well, it tells you here. Jeremiah 4:22. For my people is foolish, they have not known me. They are Scottish children, and they have none understanding. They are wise to do evil, but to do good, they have no knowledge. You see, and like Apostle Gabarwi says, man, Scottish means stupid. See, the Lord knows that we have gone off and that we're wicked when we go off, right? And because of that, He's hidden Himself from us. Because why? Because God is a God of knowledge. And He's given us, a lot of our people, He smited us with madness. And we lost a lot of the wisdom, right? This is why our leaders are all, chosen for us. The debasement is lifted up amongst our society, amongst our people, right? This is why you have no real leaders that come out of our people, because our enemies, our captors, they don't allow it. This is why all our enemies are basically created, and they're all either comedians, movie stars, musicians, or degenerates for the most part, right? But if we would have known what's going on, right? If we would know who we are in the Bible and who we are as a people, this wouldn't have been allowed to have happened. We wouldn't have allowed ourselves to go into captivity. We would have known that, we're the rulers of the world, but that, right now, it's not our time. This is a time for us to serve. This is Jeremiah 14:2. Judith mourneth, and the gates thereof languish. They are black unto the ground, and the cry of Jerusalem is gone up. So our management, our leadership, our rulers, it's languished, right? They've all fallen. They've gone away. And there's people that come up every once in a while that'll lead our people in small rebellions or a bit of leadership. But what happens? They'll either sell out to Esau or they get taken out. Because why? Because this isn't our time. This is a time for us to be in oppression, as it tells us in Deuteronomy that we shall only be oppressed, right? And this is all for going off and breaking the laws. But besides that, right? Besides our rulers, our leaders not being really there for us, that messes us up. Because why? Because they don't teach us who we were, who the true Israelites were, that they are dark people, okay? So-called Negroes. This is Baruch 22:30, For I knew that they would not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people, but in the land of their captivities they shall remember themselves. And that's what's happening right now. This is why you're starting to hear more people talk about the Hebrew Israelites. This is why you're seeing YouTube putting a ban on the Hebrew Israelite hashtags. But again, this is ultimately why the world is falling apart. It's because the Israelites are coming out of captivity, and the curses that are coming off of us are now going on to our enemies. And our enemies are trying as much as they can to bring forward their New World Order agenda before they lose power. But again, it tells you in the Bible, they lose, we win. This is John 14:17. Even the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it seeth him not, neither knoweth him, but ye know him, for he dwelleth with you, and shall be in you. So you see, the world is shocked, like that guy in the second video said, right? He didn't know Jesus was black. He didn't know the Israelites were black. And why is that? Well, because these people, even the ones who say they love Jesus and they go to church, they don't know the God of the Bible. They don't know the Messiah, okay? Because they don't understand what the true narrative of the Bible is, because the majority of people who go to church do not read the Bible, okay? And those who do actually read the Bible or listen to the Bible, they're coming at it with a totally wrong understanding of it. right? Thinking that the Gentiles is all the other people in the world, not understanding that there's two types of Gentiles. Thinking that the Lord's wine and bread literally transmutates into like blood and flesh in your mouth. Thinking a lot of carnal ways about spiritual matters. See, this is why the world does not understand what the Bible is talking about, and hence they have not gotten the true baptism, which is the baptism by the Holy Spirit, right? Which is the understanding of the Bible. But the beautiful thing is that chances are, if you're watching this video, this information has been given to you because you've been given the eyes to see and the ears to hear and the heart to understand what's going on, right? You've been led to the apostles, you've been led to brothers like me, the other brothers out here. We're making these videos to teach our people, you know, what our true lost heritage is and who we are as a people. And what does that mean in these end times that we're living in? This is Revelations 1 and 13. I just want to get this because this is what it's all about, right? What is the true image of the Messiah? Well, it tells you here in the Bible, the first chapter of Revelations 1 and 13. And in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, right, the menorah, one like unto the Son of Man, right? This is the Messiah, Yahweh Shai, clothed in a garment down to the foot, right? This is like what we wear when we go out and do ceremonies, right? Or go out to camp, right? Long garments that go down to the feet. And a girt about the paps, right? This is basically like a big old wrestling belt, right? But back then they had it to protect you from being stabbed when you would go to war. With a golden girdle. 14. His head, which is the hair on top of his head, and his hairs, which is his beard, were white like wool, as white as snow. And his eyes were as a flame of fire, and his feet like unto fine brass, as if it burnt in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. So again, this is what is being described there. This is what John the Revelator, this is what he had seen. Not this particular image, but this is a similarity, at least biblically accurate description of what the Messiah looked like. Okay, right? When you get into the book of Daniel 5 and 10, it describes he has a beryl garment, emerald colored green gem, right? That he's gonna come not for peace, he's gonna come for war. Okay, this is what all the elites are hiding themselves for. This is why the chances are the royal family has gone into hiding, because they're probably down in their bunkers because they know this is coming. They know that April 8th eclipse, that there's going to be a lot more going on than just an eclipse. This is John 17:25. O righteous Father, the world hath not known thee, but I have known thee, and these have known that thou hast sent me. So you got to understand, man, right? If you want salvation, you got to go through Yahweh Shai. You got to go through the Messiah. So again, to understand that and to know what the Messiah truly looks like, right? Which Vladimir Putin, he did a big revealing, right? He showed the world that, hey, look, the people in power before, back to the people that we honor and venerate, the people of the Bible, they were black-skinned people, right? They were so-called Negroes, right? So now that Putin has let that cat out of the bag, let's see what happens. Let's see if this, turns, into something bigger. But again, we're gonna have to see. It's ultimately on the Lord's timeline. So either way, Hakim, I just thought I highlight this. Thought it was really interesting that Putin brought it out. So hopefully you found it edifying. So until the next time, I want to give all honor and glory and praises to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Kokodash. Shalom.